So I have Ahmed Bilal with me. He's the founder and CEO of Jiye Tech, and we are on the episode of Startup Stories. So let's hear Ahmed's stories and Jiye Technologies stories and what they are doing, where they are in their journey, and get some interesting info about it. So,
yeah, thank you, Umair. Thank you for having me over. It's always a pleasure to interact with you, to get to know each other. So Umair, so our story started with two guys trying to explore something. So on my background, I did my undergrad from Lahore School, then went on to do my MBA from Tkxel University in USA. Went USA for about 2 years, came back to Pakistan in 2010, joined my family office of logistics and supply chain. So been working there for about 10, 11 years.
In the logistics and supply chain.
In the supply chain, logistics and supply chain space. So when you work in a family office or family business, you have to look into different cross-functional leadership roles, etc., etc. So there was a very good journey of about 10, 11 years. But when COVID hit all of us, so there was a time where I started thinking of doing something of my own, something which is more intellectually challenging, something which is more intellectually stimulating as well. So there was a time where I started brainstorming with my co-founder Ali Amin. We both started exploring different ideas. So I was always of the opinion to do something in supply chain because of my obvious background. But Ali, he got excited, but not really. So we find the market to be quite ripe for supply chain solutions, because at that very time, we had about 6-7 B2B players coming in, 6-7 B2C players coming in. So we thought it might be a very timely opportunity to actually sell them logistics solutions, last mile solutions, fulfillment centers, etc., etc. So went on to meet a couple of them through Ali's network. So a little bit on his background, he comes from Careem. He was a very early employee of Careem in Pakistan. Then went on to Swivel. He was again a very early employee of Swivel in Pakistan. So he knew everybody in the network, everybody in the space. So we went on to meet a couple of them, had a chit chat, figured out what they are doing in logistics, what they are doing in supply chain, what they are doing for last mile and fulfillment, etc., etc. And the problem was there for everybody almost. So felt like the right move, but did not excite Ali, because a bit more on his background, he comes from an Aarti background. So his 3 generations in his families are basically marketplace players in agri space. So you know how things work in Pakistan. The son always wants to do what the father has done and take it to the next level, etc., etc. So he had this dream from very early days of his career in Careem, where he wanted to take that to a national level, to international level, etc., etc. So that felt like a very timely opportunity for him as well, because we were already exploring supply chain.
So how did you know Ali?
So we were friends for about 2.5 years. We kept interacting.
So how did you meet?
We met through common friends. We started interacting through common friends. Then kind of found a middle way in exploring technology. In exploring tech ecosystem. He was always telling us how startups are going to be the next normal of entrepreneurship, etc., etc. So that felt very exciting, always to me. How great things they are doing in Careem.
So Ali, what was Ali's role in Careem and Swivel?
Yeah, he was in the supply team early in the Careem. Then he was
so he was managing
supply side of the business.
Supply side, the fleet onboarding and whatnot. Drivers, etc.
And then I think lately he was when he left Careem, he was in the expansion team. He was working with Fatma Mazhar. Fatma Mazhar was the head of expansion. He also worked with Mustafa Kandil of Swivel. So when Mustafa started Swivel, so he gave a call to Ali and asked him to come on board, etc. So that's how he became the early employee of Swivel as well. So yeah, the Careem alumni, all of them almost knew him. That helped us a lot in getting the sense of the supply chain and the logistics idea exploration stage. So during the process, Ali was not very convinced on the logistics part. He wanted to do agri.
So and he talked about that you were from a family office which was in the logistics space. So is that logistics space was particular to a segment or general logistics?
No, we were primarily into international, but we also did a lot of local logistics as well.
But logistics of everything. It's not just
of everything.
Particular to any particular business segment.
Just everything. So so for the last couple of years in my previous role, I was more into distribution, fleet management, warehousing, a lot of cross-border transportation for Afghanistan, etc., etc.
So you were a logistic guy, and he was a kind of supply chain.
He was no, he was actually I was a supply chain guy.
Okay,
I was the logistics and supply chain guy. He is an agri guy. He's been listening to agri all his life on dinner tables. So his paternal maternal side both are from agri-marketplaces. So he had a lot of exposure on that angle.
All right.
So he always wanted to take that legacy forward, take that legacy of the 3 generations onto some international or national level, build some tech into it, create an impact on masses.
Okay.
So that's how he was always convinced that he always wanted to agri.
So you two met, and then how did you decide upon that?
Yeah. So when we were in the exploration process, late 2020, we almost.
So इकट्ठे मिलके कोई सोचा था कि startup करने जगह, because startup market is hot and everybody is trying to do a startup. So you wanted to also do a startup, or agri was kind of a more passion?
Yeah, so for me, it was always logistics and supply chain.
Okay.
Because of my obvious background.
Yeah.
So that's what I was always convinced that I wanted to explore. He wanted to do agri, and then we figured that agri supply chain is something that we both can do.
Okay.
And he can pursue his passion of agri, I can pursue my passion of supply chain.
Sure.
And we both can bring some value on the table.
Okay.
So the combination felt very right. We started exploring agri supply chain.
And that was back in
early 2021.
Early 2021. Okay.
Yeah. So I myself also belong to an agriculturist family.
Okay.
We are not very active, but yes, we do some sort of an agriculture in the part time. So the problem felt very real to me, very close to me. I've been also listening to the same problems all my life, but never really.
So what is the problem?
Yeah,
what is the problem that you're solving?
Yeah, so the problem is actually the access to retail businesses for the farmers.
Okay.
So there's between a farmer and the retailer, there's a huge disconnect. Farmers are not able to access businesses directly. They have to go through up to 5 middlemen in the process. So these are of different sorts and means. So the very business that Ali was doing, you were trying to digitize it or kind of eliminate it or whatever. Yeah, so he kind of went against his own family.
Right.
Yeah, so that was his.
Or maybe modernizing that entire business.
Yeah, and in the process, creating an impact on the masses as well.
Sure.
Because this felt like the problem which can have an impact on about.
So the problem that you felt was really that farmers are producing, but they have to go through several middlemen to get their produce to the market.
Absolutely.
And eventually are not the beneficiary of the market value.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, so if you're a farmer, you would sell your, citrus at about 50 rupees a kg.
Okay.
And the same citrus you buy back from the market at 80 rupees a kg. So there was a huge, loss.
So imagine there is a 30 rupees gap, but obviously there is 30 rupees, or not even a 30 rupees, but some rupee value will also be coming in, like somebody's packaging it, taking it to the market, etc.
Yeah, that's an irony, because farmer would do everything. Farmer would do the packaging, farmer would do the sorting, farmer would do the first mile.
Okay.
So the trade.
So just because somebody is picking it up and taking it to the market,
right.
and displaying it, even the displays of retailers, right?
Yeah.
So they're okay.
Yeah, so there was a huge inefficiency to solve. In certain cases, if you go to far-flung areas like Skardus and Gilgits and all those places, so you would see at least 70 or 80% difference in the price.
Okay.
Between what the farmer is getting paid and what the retailer is selling at his retail point.
Okay.
So there was a huge inefficiency that needs to be solved, and at the same time we have about 5 stops for a produce before it gets to the retail outlet.
What kind of stops?
So each stop is actually a middleman. So the produce would actually physically move from one point to another point, get traded, and then get transported.
Sure.
Move, trade, transport, move, trade, transport. So something which needs to be transported in about 4 to 6 hours would take about 20 to 24 hours for it to reach from farm to the retail business.
Okay.
So there was a huge inefficiency in itself, and that would actually waste about 15% of the produced life, even only in the transit period. So yeah.
So you went after, solving this problem of that, how to make farmers, or how to really make farmers take their produce and directly sell it to the retailer.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of go about that?
Yeah, so Ali had a lot of conviction on it. He had a lot of research on it, of course. So we went on to do our organic research, went to mandis 3 a.m. in the morning, meet the middleman, meet the marketplaces, meet the farmers, meet the retailers, In certain cases, we figured that a retailer would spend about 4 hours every day going to the mandi, bringing back the produce, hiring some sort of a local transportation, local labor, and the whole process of procurement every day would cost them about 4 hours a day.
So is your solution is more from farmer to mandi or mandi to retailer?
Farm to retail. Farm to retail.
Farm to retailer. So you're even skipping the mandi part as
everything
well.
in between. Yeah.
So the startups like potentially Taza and Easy Fresh, they are after from mandi to retailer kind of. Are they in a similar space like yours? Or
yeah,
what?
they are in a similar space. So we do share the space.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, primarily we are more on the farmer side.
Okay.
I'm not sure how they are operating, but from what I understand, I think they're more on the mandi side. So yeah, our core focus is connecting farmer to the retailer.
Okay.
And skipping everything in between.
So you figured out a problem that you wanted to solve that was closer to your heart. Yeah. Then what were the next steps? I mean, so start building technology, started raising funding, team.
Yeah, the next step was obviously to bring some sort of a validation to the idea that we were pursuing. So did all the organic research, went on to different players, figured the problems and the value proposition we can add for the retailer and for the farmer.
Okay.
And there was a huge, room for development for both sides, the supply and the demand. Like I said, the farmer was spending about 1,400 hours a year just on the procurement side. In certain cases,
when you say farmer is procuring,
sorry, the retailer.
The retailer,
yeah. So the retailer was spending about 1,400 hours a year, just from the procurement, going 4 a.m. in the morning to the mandi, bringing back the produce by 8 a.m. in the morning. Okay. So there was a huge inefficiency on their part, time value of money, the loss of quality of life, etc., etc. And at the end of the day, I mean, even going through that 4-hour process, they are paying about 10% in supply chain cost,
right.
Which in our case is less than 4%.
Okay.
So even if we do our doorstep delivery for them, I mean, we are still incurring far lesser cost than a retailer because we are operating at economies of scale.
So once you decided on the problem and started to solve it, I mean, did you first build a platform? You said you first tried to figure out the market, and that's where you went to the mandis and retailers and what. Then next step.
Yeah. So the very next step was to assemble a team.
Okay.
To do a pilot run, and that's what we did for a month. We were just 3 people. Me, Ali, and there was this another guy who was working part-time with us.
Okay.
We were operating out of a 10 by 90 shop out of Bediya Road. Okay. That's how it all started. It was.
So how did it feel from a family office and running a large logistic business to all the way to a 10 by 9?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun actually. So when you see things building up at a very fast pace, it gives you a lot of optimism. It gives you a lot of encouragement, and when you see that you're trying.
And do these things feel and different in actuality rather than when you're setting it and seeing it from a larger office?
Yeah, they do. I think getting closer to the reality, getting closer to the ground was an absolute.
And that's what every founder should do.
Should do, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's the starting point. I mean, if you can't do that, then there's no point.
Absolutely. I met these Taza guys, and they also said that for the initial 1-2 months, they really had to go like 3-4 a.m. to the mandi and then just sit there and see how the work happens.
That's how the business works. Yeah. So so you have to have the grind. You have to go through the process. You need to have your own challenges, and that's how you learn. I mean, that's the process of a startup. So right. Those initial days were absolutely amazing. We started with one SKU, which was mangoes. Luckily the mangoes was a very hot SKU at that time.
You started in a mango season.
Yeah, we started in a mango season. So it helped us a lot in a way of building good traction early on. We built about
product banali thi.
Yeah, so we had our partner Muhammad. He was with us on day 0. He helped us a lot on the strategy side. On the product side, he built us a no-code application in a matter of 2.5 weeks. Okay. We kept on developing it, evolving it over the period of time. But so it was a no-code app. It was just for the retailer, and then later on we built the admin portal, the farmer portal, etc., etc. But at that time, it was just a simple retailer app where we would just put in the SKUs and the prices and all those things and the pictures, etc. So there they would order us. We would deliver it the next day. In certain cases, we did deliveries ourselves, me and Ali. We started off with
So you pick stuff from the market, or you were carrying an inventory?
Yeah, so we had a lot of edge in a way that Ali had a lot of connections in the agri-marketplaces.
Okay.
So we got hold of the the very good SKUs, very good quality SKUs at a very early stage without going back to the farm ourselves. We did build a lot of connections with the farmers.
Okay.
Yes.
So how did then you moved on to your funding rounds and what sort of journeys are?
Yeah, so the only goal initially was to build good traction, validate the business model, build enough revenue for us to go into the funding round. So we started.
So before going into the funding round, what were your traction numbers, or if you want to share?
Yeah, sure. So initially, for the first pilot month, we did about $8,000 in revenue.
Okay.
So there was quite encouragement for us. We just invested $20,000 for our own. Ali's invested $10,000. I invested $10,000. So we started with just $20,000 for our own. Did about $8,000 in revenue. The next month was about $25,000 in revenue. So that.
And you were burning cash, or was it?
Not really. We were even in certain cases we made margins up to 25%.
Okay.
Yeah. So initially a couple of months we were not burning because we were just validating the business model.
Okay.
We were just seeing how we can retain a retailer or a business, how a farmer would interact with us. What are the trust issues inherent in the market? What would be technology adoption challenges, etc., etc.
So quick to the market with just a no-code application and $20,000.
Right.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Okay.
And just a couple of guys, some of them even working part-time with us, primarily through our own network, through our own circle, etc. Most of them were just friends. I mean.
So both of you are married?
Yeah, we are.
तो घर वालों ने कहा नहीं क्या करने लगे यार?
Yeah, so Ali's wife used to say कि ये तो सब्जी वाले हैं हमेशा सब्जी ही बेचेंगे because his father was also an arti.
Okay.
He's also an arti. He's been doing this for all his life. So
right.
So she was like, you're just doing it at a national level. That's about it.
So your first funding round was a pre-seed round or what?
Yeah, it's a pre-seed $2.5 million.
So how did you go about raising it? I mean, you didn't have the experience of raising money before, right?
Yeah.
So how did you, I mean, was it like friends, family, people you just randomly? Help us more about understand how did you raise the funding?
Yeah, it's primarily the network. Number one, I think that's given.
What's network? Your network, Ali's network, or something?
It's a combination of not the two of us but the three of us. So the third co-founder Osama, he joined us a little late in October of this year. He wanted to join us, and we were always after him, fishing him, poaching him to join us as a third co-founder.
What was Osama's background?
So a little bit on Osama. So Osama is an IBA grad of 2015.
Okay.
Then he joined Bulisha and then joined Unilever. Worked in Unilever for about 4 years, led a skin cleansing category, a good role. And then he was GM for Ops of Lahore in Swivel, then GM Ops for Swivel in Pakistan. And then lately he was into the global.
सारे swivel cream वालों के सब पैसे मिल रहे हैं. Looks like.
Yeah. So Osama was at a very good place. I mean, he was in the base camp of Swivel in Dubai, based out of Dubai. He was offered a global category or based out of Dubai, and we were trying to fish him, poach him. He had a daughter in July, so he had his personal and professional commitments at that time, so he could not join us. But he kept soldiering with us, kept sharing ideas, kept sharing his experience of growth, retail markets, etc., etc., P&L scaling, etc. So we were always learning from him, but he could not pull the trigger because of his personal and professional commitments. Sure. And in October, he pulled the trigger, and now we are three of us.
So three of us, and then you had a network from which you
worked. And then we had very good advisors. We have Rana Uzair. He comes from Stanford, did his own. He's primarily into the energy sector of Pakistan. Spent about 10 years in Pakistan, raising debt financing of about $125 million or so.
So how did you find those?
So that's an interesting part because Uzair is a family friend, a long time family friend, and then we have Fatma Mazhar with us. So Fatma used to be head of expansion for Careem, then went on to MIT, did her MBA, came back, joined Keep Trucking as head of expansion, and currently she is CEO of Collabs. So she was Ali's ex-boss. And then we have Rashid Maluli. Rashid is currently head of innovation and corporate strategy at Swivel Global. Previously, he was a McKinsey partner for 12 years. He was again Ali's boss, ex-boss. So ex-bosses and a friend were advisors. They are also investors into the product. Very early on, believers in us. So yeah, we started gathering the network, consolidating the network, capitalizing on whatever we had.
So you had to knock on a lot of doors before you get the funding, or?
Yeah, that's honestly, that's a very encouraging fact that a lot of people came forward to help us.
Okay.
So we did not need to go to a lot of people ask for help, and a lot of them step forward. They offered whatever they can offer us. They helped us connect people. We also did a lot of cold calling. That's always there. So network is not the only thing for fundraising. You always have to do a lot of cold calling. You always have to knock doors. That part is organic part is always there, but primarily it's from the network.
So how did you reach? Thought about the number that you wanted to raise, the valuation caps, the mode of round, who's going to be the lead investors. How you come to decide about that?
Yeah, so we were initially planning to do a $1.75 million round.
Okay.
We had a plan for it, but when we started reaching out to investors, and we saw interest from the investors, we were actually oversubscribed, and we could not downsize a lot of investors. We had to pick the best ones, and that's what we did. Some of the investors made their debut with us in Pakistan. So Access Bridge Ventures, they were looking at Pakistani market for quite some time, could not pull the trigger, perhaps did not find the right product or so. They did that with us. A lot of angel investors, they were first-time investors in Pakistan. So with the funding and everything, I think it's about picking the right people who can the right investors who can actually add the right values, who can actually soldier with you in developing the project and giving you the right stimulus for growth. So that's what we did.
So लगता नहीं कि कि being a kind of 70% agriculture country,
yeah.
The agri funding and agri-tech space,
yeah.
It started pretty late. अभी भी बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं है as compared if you take a look at the other.
Yeah, I think it's
why is that? I mean, I'm asking this question because you must have talked to several investors, and I mean, why they are so. Even if I look at our neighboring countries, I mean, there is a lot of funding in fintech, e-com, and whatnot, but not that kind of a funding in agri-tech space.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. But in the last 1 year, if you look at the global space, so agri-tech has capitalized a lot of traction. A lot of money has been poured into agriculture, especially after the COVID, period, because food security became a very valid worry for a lot of countries, especially the ones which are heavily dependent on imports. So supply chain solutions, input side, agtechs, a lot of them got a lot of attraction. And for us, I mean, yes, you're right. It's actually late for us because we are a country which has 20% of GDP's contribution coming in from agriculture.
Yeah.
More than 70% of the population, one way or the other, is connected with
agri.
And we have the largest croppable area in the region. I mean, we have 55.6 million acres in croppable area. So that's actually huge. So that's another opportunity. But I think the challenges inherent in developing and executing the project, I think that might have scared people off in the past. But
so बहुत सारी companies I've even seen telcos and whatnot trying to do this bed part agriculture kind of startups projects. So what are the challenges in this space? And I mean, now that you have started it, you have raised funding, what do you see are the real challenges in doing a startup in this space?
Yeah, perhaps these telcos and a lot of other companies like
even banks.
Even banks, and there are some organizations which were funded by DFIs like IFC, etc. They could not do so because because their purpose perhaps was not to go very large in it. They wanted to create an impact, but with a limited scope of engagement. But for a marketplace or a B2B marketplace to survive, you need to have a huge substance and a huge quantum on both sides of the marketplace. And for that, you need to work for years and years to create that right situation where you actually get into the network effects. So for that to happen, I mean, you need to have consistent effort, growth, which only a startup model can actually achieve, because for banks or for telcos, I mean, their primary business is something else, so they can do that as part of their CSR, they can do that as part of, their role in creating an impact, which is, of course, quite appreciated, and, that's truly helpful to us as well, because even for us, I mean, they've ripened the market to some extent. But for them to actually create that kind of an impact, they need to be very dedicatedly working on it. So
where are you in your journey right now, I mean, after that funding, how the traction is growing, how everything is, and where are you?
Yeah, so we started with 3 people in July. Now we are 150 people strong.
Nice.
We started with 10 by 90 shop out of Bediya Road. Now we are working at 3 locations in Lahore, 1 in Karachi, 1 in Rahim Yar Khan. We have a fulfillment center of 50,000 square feet in Lahore. You know, we moved to 2 warehouses before moving to this, and every warehouse got choked in about less than a month. So yeah, the traction has been phenomenal. The response that we got from the businesses as well as the farmers, that's phenomenal. The experience a farmer is getting or a business is getting working with something like ours, you know, working with a platform like ours. It's been very encouraging. We have about 70% of retention rate for businesses, almost 80-85% retention rate for farmers, and even sometimes the farmers keep on calling us for courtesy calls just to maintain a relationship. So that gives us a very right signal that we are actually going after a right problem, and the problem was real, the problem was valid, and so yeah, we keep getting validation every week on week. So yeah.
And what are the plans for 2022?
Yeah, inshallah for 2022, we the 3 main agendas. One, to bring some sort of standardization in the retail business market for the agri value produce. For the agri produce, I mean, you would hardly see any kind of a standardization, and that truly impacts the farmer because they hardly see any kind of a value addition on their part.
Okay.
Because when they sell their produce in wholesale to different wholesale markets, so their produce A, produce B, and C, almost everything is treated equally. So there's almost no incentive for them to add value.
Sure.
But if we get into standardization, then they have all the more reason to get into some sort of value addition. And at the same time, we really need to give voice to the farmer for them to actually have some sort of feedback from the businesses so they can add value on their side and incentivize and capitalize on that value addition.
So in terms of traction,
in terms of and
are you raising your next round?
Yeah, we already got a lot of attention for the next round. We are into the round. We are raising another round already. Almost good amount of that is already done. So yeah, the attraction from the investors is there. But we are working on a couple of projects, especially on the financial inclusion side for the farmers. So once we trigger that, once we start a validation on that part, then we will go full on for the funding round. Yeah.
So it was great talking to Ahmed Bilal, and we have got quite a bit of insight into his startup. And all the best wishes, Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Umair. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.